Welcome, Carol.
Yolanda, I just wanted to let you know we have 61 people registered so far.
Awesome.
Oh,
That's great. Welcome, Ken.
I was muted. How are you?
Yes, good. How are you?
Good.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, same here. Nice to be here.
hi, Ken.
Hi, Ann. There you are.
We have about 18 people so far, 19.
People may treat it as an open house and drop in.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So there'll be plenty of that.
Say that again?
I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that'll do that. We're just laughing at that.
Absolutely.
You and I were early. That's not something that we attribute to artists time.
Oh, I couldn't hear you. Say that again, Anne Marie?
So,
Can't hear her.
say about I need to get closer to my computer.
Uh-huh. One more time.
I was having trouble hearing you. Yeah.
Your audio's going in and out a little bit.
My audio is on as loud as it can be.
You're better now. I think it's proximity too. Thank you everyone for joining. We should be starting in about 5 minutes. We have about 24 guests right now. Could you imagine how mellow you would be if you had this and you're playing in your house all day long? Juji, come and play. Lovely. Yay! We'll get started in about a minute as people are joining. We have about 31 people joined so far. Okay. All right, Susan, let's get started.
Good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to Imago Foundation for the Arts virtual gallery event to open our new exhibit, Wish You Were Here. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Susan Roplat-Walker, and I will be joined by Anne-Marie Rossi, Howard Roplat-Walker, Pascal Lord, Rena Naik, and Yolanda Mazzoni. We are all Imago member artists and will be your hosts this evening. And we have a great evening planned, so I'm sure you all know about that. As you may know, Imago Gallery was formed in 2003 as a place for artists to share their work with other artists as well as with the community. From the very beginning, Imago is a place where artists and those interested in the arts can join together to learn, share ideas and talents, and think cooperatively about issues important to the world we inhabit. Today, as Imago Foundation for the Arts, we still are passionately committed to the goal of making the arts a viable and active part of our communities through visual arts programs, literary events, and arts-related initiatives. Wish You Were Here will run from March 5th through April 18th. So we'd like to share a little bit about the program tonight. Okay. We are going to be we have one guest artist and 3 featured artists who are Imago artist members. We will continue to have music from Juji Watros. Wasn't her music wonderful? It's like waterfalls, so relaxing and lovely. And she composed the music herself. We will also have a poetry reading tonight. And also we're going to have a couple, like 3 trivia questions to test your art IQ. So jot down the answer to the questions as they come forward during the evening. And at the end of the night, we will share answers. So have a great evening. Enjoy all of the art that you're going to experience. Thanks for being here.
And just 2 housekeeping items. We ask that you please keep your microphones muted until you're asked to unmute. And the icon in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, you can see that mute button. And then during the program, including the interviews, if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat box, and we can respond throughout the evening. Susan?
I didn't know this was me. The mail.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's mine. It's mine. I'm sorry. My apologies. So mail art. It sounds made up, doesn't it? But it's a real niche art market. Mail art began during the 1950s Fluxus movement and has grown ever since. Our intent was to dedicate part of this exhibit to mail art for individuals to create work independently or to collaborate with other artists, establishing connections by working together. The art forms that we received included drawings, paintings, printing, collage, and even embroidery. We received over 130 postcards across the US, from Rhode Island to California, throughout Canada, and even Cuba. And we had, so we took pictures of the backs and the fronts. Even the backs of them were pretty interesting in the way people addressed them.
The stamps they used.
Yeah, even the stamps they used. Here are some examples of how they were, or how they're being displayed in the gallery. And it's great because you can see both sides, because it's really interesting. We're going to show you a few of the pieces just to give you an idea of what you can see when you're in the gallery. So we have them from everywhere. They're really beautiful. You can see printing and embroidery. That one I never, and collage, which is really wonderful.
And quilting.
And the quilting, yes, it was unbelievable. So it was a really nice exhibit. So thank you for everyone that's mailed them in. So next we would like to introduce Roseanne Kozlowski, who will be sharing one of her poems. Roseanne is the recipient of a Massachusetts Cultural Council Individual Artist Grant in poetry, and her work is published in journals including Spoon River, Poetry Review, Salamander, Connecticut Review, and Midwest Quarterly. She writes poetry, plays, and essays, and has worked as a chemist, a middle school teacher, a college professor, and a freelance writer. Roseanne?
So much. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you for joining us.
Upon light that be. Forgive my selfishness, but if you leave her, I promise to be selfless. I promise my sleeping swanhood, a neck curled into wing, pushed by the winded lake. I promise on Tuesdays and Thursdays, barring any sitcoms worth watching, I will extend night like Genesis. Clouds the length of your neck, I will read them. Lover, potential, I have no words to add, though they seem like God creating good. Add Mondays and Fridays. I am the blue lake upon the sleeping swan. I am the dark upon light that be. On Wednesdays, I gather waters, bathe the fruit of your feet. I promise the sure-footed deer. I promise the alligators too. I am the cattle that crawls into its horns and lifts the stars. I am the increase in seed and the teeming of Saturday. I made you, I made you, I made you so that we may rest.
Thank you, Roseanne. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Well, Anne-Marie here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Anne-Marie Rossi, and I'm going to introduce Ken Salome. He is this year's community exhibit winner of Imago's People's Choice Award for his entry photograph, There's No Going Back. Ken lives in Attleboro and has spent his career as an engineer focused on industrial programming. He's loved photography since he received his first camera at 8 years old, but was not able to really devote his time to photography until he retired, and has spent a substantial amount of time in the last 5 years pursuing this career. Ken's work has been published in Sigma's 2017 Best of Photography and Lemwork's 2020 A Magnificent Planet. For those of you that may be interested, Ken will be giving a talk on March 20th at the North River Art Society. Ken entered 3 photographs in this exhibit: Fall's Last Call, On Their Road Home, The Sentinel. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Ann.
Can you tell us why you chose landscapes to enter in this exhibit?
Yeah, actually, I just enjoy, number one, being outside, and those are all very local photographs. Most of my images that I take are within 5 miles from home, so I can pretty much, a lot of times, just walk out the back door and be able to take photographs. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that photographs can be found just about anywhere you look. And so I don't really need to travel all that far.
The light in your piece, Sentinel, which is showing up on the screen right now, is smoky, almost surrealistic. Can you tell me how much computer editing was done in the production process, and then how much do you use computers generally?
Yeah. You know, one thing I always strive for is to depict reality. And I probably have photographed in fog maybe about 6 times. And we never get that nice, misty fog that rolls in. You know, we just get this cloud bank. And when I took this image, I didn't even know that the birds were in the photograph. It wasn't until I got home. And I saw her, and I thought there was water on the lens or something. The image itself was pretty cold. It was a sort of an ugly gray, but about 10 years ago, I was out photographing, and it was in the fog, and the sun burned through. And it was just this incredible light that the color, it didn't look real. And I actually never did anything with the images because, nobody would ever believe that the light was like that. And, I just decided that I had to bring the reality of that light to this image. And, it works. For me, it does. And I always shoot in RAW because my images need to be developed.
So you shoot in RAW rather than rely on JPEGs. Can you tell us why you do that?
Yeah, the difference between a RAW is just a digital negative. It's like in the old film days, you have your film processed. The JPEGs are well, like if you take your images to CVS today and have them printed, that's the equivalent of a JPEG. And what happens with a JPEG is it develops it in camera, and whatever it doesn't need to develop that image, it throws that information out. And I find subtlety and a light touch when I do my development works best for me. So I can't really afford to lose any of that information because it's probably what I'm interested in is that fine detail that a JPEG would probably end up throwing out.
Can you tell us what kind of camera you use and whether you think, how important you think the actual camera that you use depends, the quality of the photograph depends on the camera that you use?
I consider my camera your canvas and paint. It's to me, it's just a light recorder. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, my favorite image I ever took was about 8 years ago. It was with one of the cheapest cameras I've ever owned. It had a kit lens, and it's I printed it out. It's framed. It's under a nice piece of glass, and it's hanging in our living room today. And what, 8-10 years later, it is still my favorite image. So I don't subscribe to the fact that you need a great camera, but I do have a good camera. It is, and just for the record, it's a Sony AR7 III, and I just bought that because I didn't want the equipment to be the limitation. I wanted to be the limitation was my own photography.
You mentioned that you dabbled in film photography in the past. How would you describe the qualitative difference between film and digital photography?
There is absolutely no question that there is a difference, and it's really kind of hard to describe. A lot of people that are into music have gone back to vinyl because they say that digital music has a brassy sound to it, and that's probably a pretty good analogy. It's probably the best I can describe it. And it also probably is a good reason to explain why I like a light touch, because you really with film you really can't do too much in the darkroom versus digital. So I think when I process my digital images, I'm pretty much almost, I'm not going to say I'm constraining myself to the film world, but I think I approach it that way.
Okay, so in closing, if you have one bit of advice that you give to your students or to people who want to emulate you, what would that one bit of advice be?
It's not your camera. It was kind of interesting. I just picked up a
Thank you, Ken. That's it. One bit of advice. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have.
Okay. You got it.
Thank you, Ken.
All right. Thank you.
That was great.
Okay, so now is your first trivia question. If you have the answer, please write it in the chat box so I can check it. So the first question is, the two brothers, GP and Mike Andrews, are now using drones to reveal to the world the hidden in the world, to the public, a world hidden in the sky. Before them, a French activist, journalist, and photographer used various aircraft to reveal in Earth from Above the beauty of our planet. Who is it?
And at the end, we'll go through the answers.
Yeah.
As a reminder. That's great. So for 2021, we will be highlighting all the Imago artist members. This will allow each artist to showcase their work during this calendar year to make up for the time lost from gallery closure from last due to COVID. So in 2022, we will resume our standard program of having a featured artist accompanied by a guest artist. But for this exhibit, we'll be highlighting 3 of our artists, Howard Windham, Mary Dondero, and Amy Sutherland. And you'll be seeing interviews from each one of them. We are now going to share our first interview with Howard Windham. Howard is an interdisciplinary artist exhibiting throughout the Northeast. Howard creates work that's whimsical, highly literate, colorful, and delightfully eccentric. He has taught studio art for many years at the University of Dartmouth and Bridgewater State University. He received his BFA from RISD and his MFA from the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. We'll show you a few of his pieces, and then we'll start the interview. And if you've met Howard, he's really funny. So this is perfect. It'll take a second to start. Here we go.
Hi, Howard.
Hi, Howard.
How you doing?
So far, so good.
Good, good. Well, I've been looking forward to this. You know, when we first started talking about this session, you said you were better at questions than answers. So I thought we'd begin like Jeopardy. The first answer is pareidolia.
I was reading the Overstory current novel, which is excellent. It's about trees. It's the Moby Dick of trees. And I bumped into that word and loved it.
But it fits so perfectly for you.
I thought so. I've been looking at faces. My first show at Imago, I think, was Making Faces. What's the name of the show? And most of what I do seems to have faces in it.
Yeah, I was wondering, so much of your work, whether it's the paper collages or your wood assemblages, are portraits. Do you think of particular people, or do you think of general human characteristics when you start to play with these patterns?
The latter. Rarely individual people. Sometimes they start looking like particular people, and I'll think about that with the title, but generally not.
The other thing I notice about what you do is that songs or characters from songs are often involved in your pictures. Do you have songs in your head while you're working, or do you listen to background music?
I listen to music. I got a present when I got my my iPhone after many years of denying the fact that I should have a portable phone. My daughter put iTunes on it for me, so every month I get a $10 bill from them, and but I listen to iTunes on the phone while I'm working, and I've got a lot of albums that I've listened to in the past, and I have a hard time finding new stuff, but that's because my definition of old age is you look at People magazine and you don't know anybody in it.
Unfortunately, at our age, it tends to be we look at the obituaries and know too many people.
There is that too, yes, indeed.
Could you describe how the patterns develop as you have the materials in front of you?
I'll see something in an image and kind of take some pieces of white paper and frame it out and start there. Sometimes it's just a rectangle or an image that seems to make sense to me. And then I'll look for other things that go with it in terms of contrast and scale, shape, color. That's with the collage, of course. The stuff in wood, which I don't have any of in this show, that's just making stuff up on the bandsaw. Postal art, we have a show at Imago now of postcards. Postal art has kind of bit the dust. You know, people used to send elaborate envelopes and the rest of it, and that's kind of dying out because nobody uses snail mail anymore.
I recall when you did that demonstration at the gallery that you kind of work quickly once you get going. Is this because you have a pattern in mind as you're starting? Or is it more of a Zen-like process?
It just evolves. My usual working habit is I'll start with something and then build on it. And sometimes it's a little piece and sometimes it's a big piece. With the collages, I prefer to find a field to work on. And I like to work with edges. So I'll get a centerpiece and work around the edge and work in rather than starting with something in the middle and working out.
Is it the edges and the patterns on the material and the colors, or does one take priority?
All of it, all of it. And I don't generally work as fast as you think I do. In fact, right now, since I put the work in for this show, I've been trying to do a couple of other pieces, and that's why I'm ready to throw everything out. I can't find stuff anymore. And I'll start with something, and I just can't find the mating pieces.
So do you think there's some thing that you would say that would kind of summarize what this particular group of work that you're presenting is?
It grew out of frustration. I was doing some other stuff and I kept doing it and spending a lot of time and not liking what I was doing and not being sure of it. And I decided that I hadn't done any collage in quite a while. Why don't I just go back and do something that I know how to do? So it's a little bit redundant, but it was fun and it kept me out of trouble for 2 months. So now I have to go back to where I started and find something else to do. I'm looking forward to spring when the weather gets warm and I can get my bandsaw going again.
Oh, because it's too cold to work in your studio?
Right. Well, the studio is okay, but the bandsaw is in the garage. And I need to have a little bit warmer than this to work with it.
Right, right.
I also need to get a flamethrower to clean out the garage.
That sounds a little extreme.
Well, it's just about that bad. Oh, and I've got a new radial saw. I've never used a radial saw, but I'm going to start working with that too.
That'll be fun.
So if I come in with my hands like this, you'll know why.
Well, I think we have a lot here. Is there any final word you'd like to say?
Hello, everybody. Be well, wear your mask, get your shots, and we'll all get through this. Has nothing to do with collage or sculpture or making art. It just has to do with be well.
Great, great. Well, that's a good message to end with. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now is my second question. I already have one good answer for the first one. For the second one, what is the name of the African-American painter very active in Cincinnati just before the Civil War and highlighted to the world on January 2021? That's an easier one if you follow the 20 January 20, what's happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. So next, we have an interview with artist Mary Dondero. Mary is an interdisciplinary artist currently living in Rhode Island. She works, Mary's one of our founding artist members of Imago, which is awesome. She works as a professor of art at Bridgewater State University. She leads our exhibition committee, and she's on various boards and acts as the curator of the exhibitions at the Bristol Art Museum. So Mary, welcome.
Hello.
Hi. The first question is, can you share with us the journey that led you to focus on abstract art?
Well, the easy answer would be just to express feelings. It's about searching for a way to actually make an authentic expression of how I feel. And it's also, I think it's a way of revealing my internal logic. And it's very much about, it's not about just seeing my way through the world, but feeling the journey as well as understanding what I'm looking at and it's more like a journey and a search. It's definitely a kind of a seeking process.
Wonderful. Can you share with us your source of inspiration? You did a little bit.
Yeah, they're both interrelated.
Yes.
I actually experienced synesthesia, which is the experience of, some of you will know, possibly if you see a particular color, it translates as taste. Or if you feel a particular temperature, it translates as a scent. And for me, when I know that I have something to put on paper or on canvas or whatever it is, it actually comes through as a feeling like I'm being punctured physically. And it strikes me that way. And then I just know I go to the paper and do it, and there it is. So it's inspired by weather. I can't deny the fact that there's a lot of inspiration from the natural environment and sensations of weather and temperature conditions and humidity. And I think that does come to a lot of artists who live near the ocean.
Great. What's really interesting is your mark making is very expressive. You know, artists strive to make expressive marks, and as they further into their career. Can you tell us a little bit about the tools you use and how they help you reinforce your concepts?
So the tools are no big mystery. There's nothing attached to the idea or interest about process. For me, it's definitely about the brain and the hand working together in immediacy, in the moment. That's not to say that there aren't plans that I make before I get to the studio when I get that punctured feeling. And it's also an intellectual investigation to explore the way color and marks can create meaning through abstract language, to reinforce the concepts through combinations of color and how those can develop meaningful conversations for the viewer.
That's wonderful. That's great. Anything you would like to add before we close?
I don't think so. I don't know. It's there's no big mystery to my work. The one thing I do like, I will add, is I like sparkles. And so I do go out of my way to use pastels that have a sparkle in them. It's a mica. And there's some kind of connection there in my mind. The sparkle has this very luxurious quality to it, and it speaks to our desires. And so that is one thing about the materials that I do like to think about.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, Mary. Thank you for the.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So our next featured artist in an interview is with Amy Sutherland. We'll show you a few of her pieces as a ceramic artist.
Welcome to this Imago artist interview. I am Rena Naik. I am an Imago artist member. I am joined here today with Pascal Lord, who is also an artist member. We are here to interview Amy Sutherland, who is an Imago artist member. She is going to be one of the highlighted artists in the upcoming exhibit at Imago. Amy is a ceramic sculptor. She graduated from Skidmore College with a Bachelor of Science in Arts in Sculpture. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
Sure, we have a few questions for you today. Could you speak about what brought you to sculpture?
Well, I went into college not really knowing what I wanted to study, and I happened upon a sculpture class that I just fell in love with art and sculpture and just working with my hands. It just allowed me a breath of fresh air just to be able to express myself through my hands without really being able to have to use my brain too much, just kind of letting it naturally flow from my fingers. So I just kind of fell in love with it.
Okay, and now could you speak a little bit about your inspiration, especially your intriguing series with your title, People Watching?
Yeah, so a lot of my inspiration comes from just observing people, finding their quirks in their fashion and just mannerisms and finding the humor in that, and also just finding maybe underlying psychological issues. So a lot of it is just playing around with that and just seeing what I see and letting it come into my pieces.
Yeah, they're very interesting. Could you speak about what are your major art influences?
One of my all-time favorite artists is Wesley Anderegg. He's another ceramicist, and he's got some really weird ceramic sculptures, and he's got some functional pieces and just characters that I kind of fell in love with. They've got these weird skin textures and just funky faces and weird expressions. So he's been a huge inspiration for me.
Okay. Could you share a bit about your process and the material you are using in your creation?
So my primary material is clay. Recently, I've been expanding a little bit more on what that means to me, since traditionally with ceramics, you want it to be clay, then bisque fired, then glazed, then fired again, and then voila, you have a ceramic piece. Versus now I've been playing around more with different types of firing. So putting it in my backyard fire pit and just seeing what happens. And then just using different types of materials like nail polish, acrylic paint, different things just to find new textures, new colors, and kind of expand just from ceramics to a whole much broader sculpture thing.
Okay, could explain, the last one of the New Year piece you put in the gallery, you work with, you introduce some wood and some rope. Can you explain a bit about this new introduction in your work?
Yeah, so that actually came out of what was ingrained in me a very long time ago in one of my sculpture classes, that every single piece you have needs a base and that just stuck with me for some reason. So I found this piece of wood, I think on a beach somewhere, and I've just been saving it for a couple of years, just waiting for the right piece to put it with. So when I was creating these little, like almost egg-like characters, I figured that they needed a nest to sit in. And I thought that they would fit perfectly on that little piece of wood. So that's how it came together.
The rope?
And the rope, that's just some like twine on a wire that I used to kind of build that little nest there. So
very interesting, very, in different, not different, but very, like you see an evolution in your work. So that's very intriguing and interesting.
Could you talk about, so this is where your work has come from. We will see, and viewers of who would come to see the gallery, in the gallery would see a lot of your different types of pieces. And they are all from different series, or is that all from one series?
No, this one, they're all pulled from different series. I think some are just kind of exploration pieces. Others are from, I think one's from the Junkyard series, and then I'm not sure where the other ones are from. I can't really remember, but they're all just little favorites that I pulled from here and there that I thought would be kind of fun to look at all together.
Okay. Where do you think your work is going next?
I don't really know. I kind of just use art as a means of play. So I kind of just let it take me where it wants to. It kind of depends on my own mental state, what's going on in the world around me. So I'm just letting it have fun and explore.
Well, that's a really fantastic. We wish you continued adventures and explorations in art, and your pieces are fantastical. We highly recommend everyone take a look at them. And thank you so much, Amy, for joining us today.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, third trivia question. So which world-famous architect struck by a tram in 1926 and left on the side of the road like a beggar before dying in a local hospital once said, "The straight line belonged to man, the curve one to God"? So same thing, don't hesitate to give me your answer into the chat box.
Susan? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute, trying to be quiet. Imago Foundation is very excited to continue our Artists Speak series for those of you who are able to enjoy presentations over the past year and a half. And the newest artist that will be speaking on April 18th is Joan Houserath. I apologize if I'm not saying her name correctly. And she's a noted printmaker who grew up in Ohio and spent lots of time at the Cleveland Museum of Art, which is a gem, it's a treasure trove of arts and artifacts. And she loved that. And she will be speaking. She was also a fiber artist at one time when she broke away from printmaking. She did more traditional printmaking at first, but has moved into more sustainable printmaking or less toxic printmaking in her current work or her more recent work. And so we look forward to hearing about her journey and about her take on the arts that she's engaged in and on printmaking in particular. So we look forward to welcoming her on April 18th and hope many of you can join us then.
Wonderful. So the following portion of our event will be images of work from all our artist members that are part of the exhibit. the song that you'll hear in the background has been written and is being performed by our artist member, Juji, who you had listened to in the beginning. But in this section, she's going to be playing the ukulele.
All I wanna do is to be with you. By your side tonight keeps me warm. When the winter's long, you haven't lost your charm. Though it's cool today, we can go today. When the summer's you'll think, baby, no. So we'll put on easy. Then you'll lie next to me. You'll be my home wherever I will roam. It's a simple truth, honey, I love you.
Almost timed it. And that's it. So now we are going to go into our trivia questions and answers.
Exactly. So the first answer was Yann Arthus Bertrand. So Yann Arthus Bertrand is a photographer and journalist specialized in wildlife and aerial photography. He worked for French magazines such as Paris Match and Géo. He created the world's first press agency and Images Bank, specializing in aerial photography. Sponsored by UNESCO, he made an inventory of the world's most beautiful landscape taken from helicopter or hot air balloon. All are in his famous book, Earth from Above, and in French, Terre vue du ciel. And this famous art, if you want, when we'll be able to travel again, if you want to go to New Caledonia, and it's where this art is, and it's called the Art of Vaux.
Did anyone get it?
Yes, we have Leona. Leona is very talented. She got the right answer for the 3 questions.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Yeah. We have a winner.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Second answer is Robert S. Duncanson. So he was born, he was one of the most accomplished African-American painter in the United States. In 1860, the American press proclaimed him the best landscape painter in the West, while London newspaper hailed him as the equal of the British contemporaries. Duncanson wanted to be the best at his profession and embarked upon a grand tour of Europe in 1853 to study the masters. And Landscape with Rainbow, the one presented on January 20, reflects the benefit of this first trip to Europe. You can now admire this painting at the SAM in Washington, DC. So same thing, one will be able to travel a bit easier, we could go and see this famous painting in DC. And for this third question, of course, it's Gaudi. So Gaudi was a Catalan modernist architect. His work is very recognizable. He integrates into his architecture ceramics, stained glass, ironwork, and carpentry, all influenced by neo-Gothic art and Orientalism. His work is highly inspired by natural forms. Gaudi rarely drew detailed plan of his work, preferring to create three-dimensional scale models. His masterpiece, the still incomplete Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, is the most visited monument in Spain. And 7 of his works are part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. Thank you for participating in this trivia game.
Thank you, Pascal, for coming up with those questions. They were hard. So, as you know, Imago Foundation for the Arts is a nonprofit. Your donations allow us to fund a number of programs, including artist talks, the poetry readings, book clubs, lectures, musical performances and exhibitions, as well as subsidizing art student memberships and also a high school scholarship. So wonderful work, or it's wonderful to be able to give back to the community. So there's different ways that you can connect with us on social media. One is through Facebook at Imago Foundation, and also on Instagram. There's 2 Instagram accounts. So you can keep up with what's going on in the gallery in the next upcoming shows. To purchase artwork, you can please send an email to imagogallery@gmail.com. And with that, please go to our website, imagofoundationforart.org, to learn more about our current exhibit, any upcoming events, and recordings of all the virtual events, all the virtual receptions, I should say, including the artist interviews. So thank you. Thank you all for joining us this evening.